All right, today I want to walk you through how to use Photoshop to create some simple motion um, with some of the images we have. So what we're going to do is, just like last time, we're going to go to File, New, to open up a new document. Again, we're going to do 5 inches by 5 inches. Last time we did a higher resolution, it was 150 pixels per inch. This time, because this is going to be for the screen, we can do a lower resolution. So the resolution here is going to be 72 pixels per inch. So 5 inches by 5 inches at 72 resolution. And we'll hit OK. So now we have our artboard. And what we want to do is load an image in. So I'm going to go to my files. I'm going to find my folder that has my images in it, and I am going to pull it in. I'm going to choose this image. I'm going to hit OK, and I'm going to just make sure it is full in the artboard. Hit enter. So now we have our image here. We're going to make sure we don't have a background layer. So I'm going to hit delete. And now I just have the one layer in my panel of my image. So now what we'll do is we want to duplicate this layer 9 times. So there's 2 ways to do that. We could either hit Command or Control A, select everything, and then copy and paste it, or we can duplicate the layer by holding Command or Control J. So now we have 2 layers. So we want to do this 9 times. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So that gives us 10 layers. And what we're going to want to do is go to each layer and change the opacity. So to do that, we see opacity right here. The first layer, I should say, we want to basically reduce the opacity by 20% each time, and that's going to be how we get our motion. So over time, the image will slowly get more and more opaque. So the first layer, we will do 80% opacity. The next layer, we'll do 60% opacity, 40% opacity, and I'm just clicking into that box, typing in and hitting enter. We'll do 20% opacity, and then we'll do 0% opacity. And then we're going to go back up, so 20%, 40%, 60%, 80%, and lastly 100. And the reason why this last one is 100 is it gives us a point where there's only one frame, the last frame in our sequence, that we have a full opaque image at 100% opacity. If we did the first layer at 100 and the last one, then we'd have 2 frames with 100% opacity. So we want just 1 frame. So 80, 60, 40, 20, 0, and then back up 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Great. Now that we have that done, we want to open up what's called the timeline. So to do that, we're going to go up to the top bar here, hit Window, and come down to Timeline. It's going to open up this sort of bottom section of our screen where we can start to mess with time and start to create our animation. So basically we have 2 options here. We have Create Video Timeline and Create Frame Animation. We can access those by this little drop down. We want to hit Create Frame Animation. So I'm going to click this button here, and we see we have our first frame. Now we want to go over to this little 3 lined icon here in the corner. And when we click that, we get some more options, and we want to do Make Frames from Layers. So now you can see it took each one of our layers here in our layer panel, and it made different frames for them. So each frame you can start to see the image getting more and more light and then getting darker until it's full. We have the option to control how many or how long each frame is shown. So what I want to do is not have different times per frame. I want to have all my frames have the same duration. So I'm going to go through and I want to change how long my frames play for. It has sort of preset options you can choose here, but what I want to do is be a little more nuanced. So I'm going to come down to Other, and we can type in our own delay. So we're going to do 0.03 just for an example. And then when I hit play down here or spacebar, we'll start to see our animation here. If when you play through, it just plays once, you want to come down here. So if I had it as once, it would just play once. We want it to say forever. Cool, so we've made our first animation. If we want to export this, it's going to be a little bit different than exporting an image. So what we want to do is come to File, then we want to go to Export, and then we want to go to Save for Web. In the preset panel up here, we want to use GIF 128 dithered. For the looping options, you're going to want to make sure forever is selected. If you want to preview what it looks like, you can hit this preview button down here, and it will show you kind of what your animation looks like. And it'll open that in your browser. So now we want to hit Save. Choose where you want to save your file to. Give it a name. So I'm going to name this bread motion because it's a photo of bread and it's a motion. And then we can just hit save. Great. So now if I go to my desktop, I see my file here, bread motion. Click on it and it animates, which is awesome. Now this is just an intro of one of the things you can do. You can make whatever sort of changes you want, scaling it, moving it around, but this will give you an idea on how to create motion in Photoshop by sort of doing this frame by frame thing. But when we export these for our book, it's going to be slightly different because we don't want a video file. We can't put that in a book, but instead we want to export each layer individually. So to do that, again, we're going to go to File, Export, but this time we want to choose Layers to Files. And basically what this does is it takes each layer and exports it as a individual image. So what we want to do is choose JPEG. We want to use high quality, so 8. We'll choose 8 here. And you can choose your name. So I'm just going to name mine bread motion. To choose where you save it to, you hit this browse button and it'll allow you to choose your the folder you want to save it in. So I'm just going to save mine to my desktop for the moment. When you hit run, you'll see your computer start to do some things on its own as it starts to export. Now we see export layers to files was successful. And we can see all of our images here. So this is basically the same thing. This is our video. This is our video that we exported. And all these images are just the individual frames of that video. So these are what we can start to put into our InDesign document for our process book.